Welcome to Healthy Conversations, sharing the knowledge, experience, stories, and the wisdom of herbalists and other natural healers, with your host, Stephen Horn. Today's guest, David Tanner. Hi, and welcome to Healthy Conversations. With me again today is David Tanner, my longtime friend and the owner and operator of Red Rock Naturals here in Utah. And today we're going to talk about something that fascinates me. Dave has told me some about this, and I think it's really interesting about the noble elements that and how they affect our health. We're talking about things like silver, gold, maybe platinum. I don't know.
Yes.
So, Dave, take it away, because I know you've worked with this thing, and it's kind of an old alchemist tradition about the noble elements, especially gold, and its effect on human health. So, why
Yeah.
don't you tell a little bit
Okay.
about your research?
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. As you indicated, I had the opportunity to dive into this kind of research, and it really came along when I first was getting involved with the whole trace mineral business. Somebody introduced a little book to me about ancient alchemy and the practice of those old alchemists. And what they learned that far back is that certain elements in the trace element kingdom, the noble group, like you just got through mentioning, silver, gold, the platinate groups, which includes osmium, ruthenium, and so on. First of all, they do play a very vital role in human wellness, and they then learned that if they exerted certain different kinds of pressures and intentions and biological chemistries and so forth to these elements under certain conditions. We'll use gold because that's really become the primary example in alchemy today. The gold molecule in its metallic state under certain influences will actually give up one. It converts from a metallic compound into a crystalline compound and then becomes what we call a superconductor. So the question is, well, why is that so important? Well, there's some really, really cool research that came out of Lawrence Berkeley Labs in about the mid 80s that they had discovered that this old alchemic, they called them secrets, in the old circles, but the discovery came as a result of modern research from a guy by the name of David Hudson. Anyone that wants to Google him and take a real deep dive into white powder gold, that's a real fun one. In fact, the old alchemists called it the philosopher's stone, and that in this element, in this superconductive state, not only helps the body heal, but it gives superior anti-aging properties. So those old alchemists apparently could live for a very long time when utilizing it. Well, coming back to modern times, some scientists discovered this superconductive properties of these crystalline minerals in the noble groups. So at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, they had designed equipment, which this blows my mind that they could actually track to such a finite state and discover what they did. But they took a short strand of DNA that actually requires ruthenium, which is in that noble group, to sit at the base. And they learned that its particular purpose was to release electrons into the double strand of the helix. And these electrons actually carried code messages to instruct RNA what its responsibility or job is in communicating the correct messages over to the gene packages for protein production. So anyway, so they've got these little ruthenium particles. There were about 4 or 5 right at the base of the strand, and they measured that electron impulse into the helix at 10,000 pulses per time sequence, and it was just seconds. They then took the ruthenium in this crystalline state that I was talking about and placed them at the base, and it went immediately from 10,000 pulses up to 1,000,000. And in order to handle that kind of a high charge, they then discovered that there are dormant strands lying alongside of the active ones, and it started to switch them on to handle that kind of a charge. So in other words, this is DNA potential getting switched on.
Well,
And
you've never been able to let me try any of this, and someday you've got to get me some of this.
well, here's one of the real fun parts about that. You were chiding me slightly about not getting you out to the mineral deposits yet, but this is really fun too because, and we got to do it. This David Hudson that I'd mentioned, a real quick snapshot on his story. He was a farmer in southern Arizona, and one year, part of his soil kept exuding up this white material to the surface, and so it was different than anything he had seen before. So he scraped some of it up, and he took it over to the University of Arizona and had them analyze it. And when they concluded their analyzation, they said, look, we don't know what it is. We can measure a couple of things in there, but the actual volume of the aluminum, and I don't remember the other one that was in it, is so small in comparison to the volume of the material we were analyzing. They said, we don't know. So that puzzled him. He then heard a rumor that some of the old miners, I can't remember the name of the town, but central Arizona, had these stories that they would talk about this white ghost gold that when they would process for the regular metallic gold, this stuff would show up once in a while, and it would show up for a minute and disappear for a minute. And so they called it ghost gold. Well, he was curious when he heard about that. So he went up and talked to him and got their story. And the long and short of it is he spent a lot of money and finally wound up in Russia. There was a laboratory over there that had the kind of technology that they could analyze the entire compound. And that's when they discovered that this was the same stuff that those ancient alchemists spoke of back in the day, the white powder gold or the philosopher's stone, that would apparently give long-lasting life and high spiritual intelligence. In other words, opening up the mind too. We use maybe 10% of our mental capacity along with maybe 10% of our DNA potential. Well,
Yeah, actually, there's a huge amount of our DNA that does not code for proteins. In fact, I read this that when the researchers were investigating DNA, they thought since there's a certain amount of proteins that the body makes, because these proteins are basically strings of amino acids that are read from the codes in the DNA, and they collapse into these three-dimensional shapes that create enzymes and little molecular machines that then pull in a mineral that has an electrical capacity for that. And, like the little rotor that runs the flagellum or a little thing that creates ATP. They're if you've seen videos of them, they're actually like machines at the molecular level, and it's absolutely amazing. But what they found is that only about 30% of the genes are coding for proteins. About 70% of the genes, they call it junk DNA, isn't doing anything. Well, I've this begs the question about the whole idea that human beings have sort of degenerated from the idea of the biblical idea of the fall, and we've been going downhill ever since, and that we're capable of far greater health, longevity, mental capacity, and everything than we're able to do. But something is basically shut off in our body that needs to be turned back on. So it's a very interesting topic to me.
It really is, and
obviously we don't know all the secrets yet. Yeah, right, it is kind of fun.
We're learning. But you'll love this little part, I think, and I think our listeners will quite like this little story. So, after David Hudson made all of his discoveries, he set up a big manufacturing facility to make this stuff, not only for human use, but they were discovering some pretty fabulous industrial uses because we're dealing with superconductors. And so as he got deep into this, the federal government discovered him and actually got behind him for a while. And what they apparently wound up doing was hauling him all over the world, using him as a catalyst to get resources from third world countries and to discover, how much of this kind of material may exist in their soils. So anyway, he played that role with them for quite a while, and then he kind of got tired of the government and all the crap that goes on there. And he just basically retired. But he said this at one point that I thought was really interesting. As part of that work with the government, they developed satellite technology that could pick up high frequency images uh, uh, over concentrated areas that they then discovered is where this material naturally occurs. And so he finally said, "Look, guys, central Utah, where all these trace mineral deposits are," he says,
Oh,
"is the highest concentration of these superconductive elements on the planet." Well,
that's
man, when we
very
heard that,
interesting.
we were like, "Whoa, okay, let's go out and dig some more," which we did. We also went during the springtime, so we'll want to go out there soon. During the springtime, when there's
Uh-huh.
enough moisture going down through those deposits, this white material just forms on the surface of the black material. And so we scooped a bunch of that up and brought it home and took it through a little simple process. And at the time, I was working with my cousin who's a brilliant alchemist of his own. You know Calvin well, and he
Yeah,
actually
I know
handled
Calvin.
all,
Yeah, we.
yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but he handled all the strategic metals for Boeing aircraft up in Seattle for years. So he's really good at working with these noble elements, particularly gold. So anyway, we took it through this process, and I got it into a little liquid suspension. And at that time, he had just purchased a new software program that could take Carillion photographic pictures of elements so you could see the aura around it. And so we submitted this material to that camera and took the photos. And what came off of that was so cool. It started out as a perfect round blue circle in the middle. And then it had a little symbol in it, which was really interesting. I'll get back to that in a second. But it started out with a beautiful light blue, perfectly round circle, and then it burst like almost a sunburst, going out through the violet and gold spectrums, and it just had this looked like a picture of the sun, radiating on the outer side of it. What was curious about that little symbol in the middle, this particular software could also identify ancient symbols. And whoever programmed it, was quite
That's
brilliant. And the cool part of it is that it identified it as a Hebrew letter, one of the letters of creation. So we're sitting there looking at that, going, "Wow!"
which
We
one?
don't know.
Which one?
It
Okay.
it was one of them was Tav, and the other one Tav, and the other one was I'll have to look. I can't think of it for the
Oh, okay.
second. I'll send you a picture of it. It's pretty dynamic deal.
Well,
But anyway,
didn't he also? He was actually extracting the herbs in glycerin, but using the wasn't he using the gold and silver to help extract the plants?
yeah. In
In
fact,
that
he and I were
process, he
working
was
together on that. Yeah,
yeah, and it's too bad he dropped that project because the extracts he was making were absolutely frickin' amazing. I've never
yeah, they
seen
were.
anything quite like it. And I
Yeah.
wish we could get back and do that technology again.
We may have an in to do that. I got to do a little probing, but it's possible. He's busy with other projects, but when he and I were working together, I made a suggestion to him because he was also machinist expert, and I told Calvin at the time. I said, "Look, if you can develop a chamber that has low heat but super high pressure, we can burst open the plant molecules and get right down through the myelin sheath to the real seed of the plant and extract it without damaging it. And you got to be able to do that without high heat." And by golly, he built that little chamber, and we made it work. And that's one of the reasons why we were getting such a good extraction out of the herb itself, along with using the minerals as part of that process.
Yeah, well, he was actually
So,
taking I know that what was happening is the entire thing was going into suspension and staying there.
right,
Not just
yes,
normally you have sediment, right? You have material that you filter
Yeah.
out, and he had herbs that it was basically taking and liquefying the entire plant material, and I thought that was incredible. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Well, he's not doing it anymore, but I know who has the chamber. So we, perhaps we can.
that would be
See.
really good. Cool. Well, there's some
But
exciting stuff here you're dealing with.
yeah, these materials are dynamic, and I really believe, Stephen, that we're meant to have these sciences come back into the wilderness with us. I think we're moving into energetic times, both physically and spiritually. We'll leave it at that. But
Okay.
it has been prophesied over time that these great sciences would come back to us, and that we would at some point be able to step back into the full potentiality of our DNA and brain functions. I think we're close. Besides, you and I are old enough now that it's got to get close.
We better be close, because I think we're both
Right?
feeling our age, and it'd be nice if we could
Yeah,
turn
we
back the
are.
clock a little bit.
That would be sweet.
Okay. Well, this one got a
So
little
anyway, yeah,
esoteric, but it's still fascinating, where this could take
it
us.
is. Well, and when
Yeah.
you consider history, if it's a little too esoteric for some people, if they want to just at least poke their nose into old histories and old societies, they were very esoteric. They were very skilled at healing. And this is the knowledge that they had back then. And so we hope it's going to come back to us.
Right. Well, anyway, it'd be interesting someday if we can really understand how to use gold and platinum and these things as healing agents. Because we know that all these minerals are present in
Right.
plants in some quantity. And so I think that all of the elements are
Correct.
probably utilized in human life in some capacity or other in very tiny amounts. And we just don't know all the function of these things as of yet. In fact, I've got a really great book. I don't know if you've seen Minerals for the Genetic Code. Have you seen that book?
Yes. I have a copy. It's fantastic.
Yeah. The talks about these trace elements and how they fit in with our nerve centers and the different functions in our body. And I think it would be interesting to see how that bears out. Also, another thing, application of that is I have a book about weeds that tells you how to look at the weeds that are growing in your land and tell what mineral deficiencies that signals.
Nice.
So if you then get those minerals in the
That's
soil,
awesome.
it restores them. And the author of that book, claims that the weeds grow because those weeds have the capacity of pulling those minerals out of the atmosphere and putting them in the ground. So they're basically trying to rebalance the soil. That was fascinating, that book too. So I think there's a whole lot we need to learn about this that we just are only scratching the surface
And
on.
then another thing that we've toyed with is, are we off? Oh, okay, just checking.
We're on. You just, yeah.
So another thing that we've toyed with, when you look at a prickly cone pine tree, they found one up on Cedar City Mountain that is, if I recall, about 3,000 years old.
Bristlecone pine. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And
yeah.
It has built into it the genetics, long life history or longevity. And one of the things that Calvin did at one point is he was taking these old trees. Now, at the time, he was experimenting with cedar trees because, according to some of the ancients, cedar trees are loaded with gold. So we were burning down the wood to an ash and extracting the minerals out that way. So it's the same idea, but it's just these trees that have been around for a long, long time may hold some pretty nice genetic surprises for us. So if we just learn how to.
Well, David, learn how to do it. Well, David, thank you for being with us on Healthy Conversations. This is a fantastic look of maybe what the future holds for us with carrying forward. And if you and I don't finish all this, hopefully other people will pick up some of these things and continue to work with them. If you'd like to get a hold of Dave, link to his website and contact information is found in the link below. And we appreciate all of you for joining us with this thing of Healthy Conversations. Thanks again, Dave.
You betcha, Stephen. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to catch future episodes of Healthy Conversations. Help us educate others by sharing this video, and please feel free to share your own thoughts, comments, and questions below. To learn more, check out the links below.